If the world suddenly stopped having oxygen, CO2, hydrogen, nitrogen, what would be the consequences? If the world suddenly had no oxygen for 30 seconds, it would have catastrophic consequences for all aerobic life forms, including humans, animals, and most plants. Oxygen is essential for cellular respiration, the process by which cells generate energy. Without oxygen, aerobic organisms cannot produce energy efficiently, leading to various immediate and severe effects. Loss of consciousness. Within seconds of oxygen deprivation, humans and animals would lose consciousness due to the brain's oxygen requirements. Lack of oxygen to the brain, even for a short period, can cause dizziness, confusion, and ultimately unconsciousness. Suffocation. After losing consciousness, breathing would stop, leading to suffocation. Oxygen is required for the exchange of gases in our lungs, allowing us to breathe and eliminate carbon dioxide. Without oxygen, the body cannot expel carbon dioxide, which can quickly build up to toxic levels. Cell damage and death. Cells in the body would begin to suffer damage and eventually die due to lack of oxygen. Vital organs like the brain, heart, and liver would be especially affected. If oxygen deprivation continues for longer than 30 seconds, the consequences become increasingly severe, and irreparable damage can occur. Death of aerobic life. Most aerobic organisms, including humans, animals, and many plants, would die within minutes if deprived of oxygen for more extended periods. Anaerobic organisms that do not require oxygen for survival, such as certain bacteria and archaea, might survive, but the balance of the ecosystem would be significantly disrupted. Disruption of ecosystems. The loss of oxygen-dependent organisms would lead to ecological imbalances, affecting food chains and the health of entire ecosystems. This could have cascading effects on other organisms, leading to widespread disruption and potentially the collapse of certain ecosystems. Fortunately, this scenario is highly unlikely to occur naturally on a global scale. Oxygen is abundant in the Earth's atmosphere and is continuously produced by photosynthetic organisms such as plants and algae. Even localized events that cause oxygen depletion, like large-scale fires, have significant but temporary impacts. The consequences of a global loss of oxygen would be so severe that it serves as a reminder of how vital oxygen is for all aerobic life forms and the delicate balance of Earth's ecosystems. If the world suddenly had no oxygen, the immediate effects on buildings would depend on various factors, but in general, the lack of oxygen itself wouldn't cause buildings to collapse directly. Buildings primarily collapse due to structural failure, which can be caused by other factors such as natural disasters or human-induced events. However, the absence of oxygen would have other significant impacts on structures and the environment. Fire hazards. Fire requires oxygen to burn. Without oxygen, fires cannot sustain combustion, which means any ongoing fires would extinguish. However, if there were still oxygen-containing materials or gases present, such as in confined spaces or certain chemical processes, localized fires might continue to pose a risk. Human intervention. If the absence of oxygen is limited to a 30-second scenario, humans wouldn't be able to intervene effectively during that time. For example, firefighters wouldn't be able to use traditional methods to control fires within that brief period. Materials and infrastructure. Many modern building materials, especially those involving steel and concrete, are not directly dependent on atmospheric oxygen for structural integrity. Therefore, the absence of oxygen alone wouldn't cause buildings to collapse. However, in the long term, without oxygen, the degradation of materials due to rust and corrosion might slow down or stop, which could potentially prolong the lifespan of certain structures. Indirect consequences. While the lack of oxygen wouldn't directly cause buildings to collapse, the collapse of human society and infrastructure could occur due to the disastrous impact on all forms of life. The sudden and total absence of oxygen for even a short time would lead to a massive loss of life, social chaos, and the breakdown of essential services, which could indirectly result in damage and destruction to buildings and infrastructure. In summary, the direct impact of a 30-second absence of oxygen on buildings would be limited, but the overall consequences on human life and society would be catastrophic. Buildings collapsing or not would be overshadowed by the unimaginable human toll and the collapse of civilization as we know it. Thankfully, this scenario is purely hypothetical and not something that is likely to occur in reality. For all the buildings on our planet to collapse simultaneously or within a short time frame, there would need to be an extremely catastrophic and global event. Such an event would have to be powerful enough to overcome the structural integrity and stability of buildings worldwide. Here are a few hypothetical scenarios that could lead to such a catastrophic outcome. Global seismic event. An unprecedented and extremely powerful global earthquake could potentially cause widespread structural failure of buildings. However, it's important to note that earthquakes are typically localized events, and it is highly improbable for one seismic event to affect the entire planet simultaneously. Asteroid impact. A massive asteroid impact, depending on its size and location, could cause massive destruction on a global scale, including the collapse of buildings. The impact's shockwave, seismic activity, and resulting tsunamis would lead to widespread devastation. Supernatural cataclysm. In fiction or theoretical scenarios, supernatural or sci-fi events, such as a global gravitational anomaly or an apocalyptic event triggered by advanced technology, could lead to the simultaneous collapse of buildings worldwide. Planetary tectonic shift. A hypothetical scenario where the Earth's tectonic plates undergo an unprecedented and simultaneous shift, leading to massive earthquakes and widespread structural failure. It's essential to emphasize that the likelihood of any of these scenarios occurring in reality is extremely remote. The laws of physics and geology that govern our planet make such global events highly improbable. In reality, catastrophic events usually occur on a localized scale rather than affecting the entire planet at once. In the real world, buildings can collapse due to localized factors like earthquakes, hurricanes, terrorist attacks, or poor construction practices, but the impact is typically limited to specific regions or cities. Engineers and architects design buildings to withstand various forces and stresses, making them resilient under normal circumstances. However, these structures have limitations, and severe and prolonged exposure to extreme conditions could lead to their failure. To minimize risks, building codes, safety regulations, and disaster preparedness play crucial roles in ensuring the safety of buildings and their occupants. If the carbon dioxide, CO2, level in the Earth's atmosphere were to suddenly become zero, it would have severe and far-reaching consequences for the planet's ecosystems, climate, and life as we know it. However, it's important to note that a CO2 level of absolute zero is an extreme and hypothetical scenario that is practically impossible to occur in reality. Nevertheless, understanding the potential consequences can highlight the critical role CO2 plays in our environment. Here's what could happen. Terrestrial plant life collapse. Plants, including trees and crops, rely on CO2 for photosynthesis, a process through which they produce energy and oxygen. Without CO2, photosynthesis would cease, leading to the widespread death of terrestrial plant life. This would have cascading effects on the entire food chain, impacting herbivores, carnivores, and humans who depend on plants for food. Oxygen depletion. Plants play a crucial role in maintaining oxygen levels in the atmosphere through photosynthesis. With no CO2 for photosynthesis, the oxygen production would be severely reduced, leading to a decline in atmospheric oxygen levels. Oxygen is vital for the survival of most aerobic organisms, including humans, and a significant drop in oxygen levels would lead to mass suffocation and death. Disruption of ocean life. Marine plants, like phytoplankton, also rely on CO2 for photosynthesis and are responsible for a significant portion of the Earth's oxygen production. A lack of CO2 would lead to a decline in phytoplankton populations, disrupting the marine food web and reducing oxygen production in the oceans. This, in turn, would lead to a decline in marine life, affecting fisheries and the livelihoods of millions of people. Temperature extremes. CO2 is a greenhouse gas, meaning it helps trap heat in the Earth's atmosphere. Without CO2, the planet would rapidly lose its ability to retain heat, leading to extreme temperature swings between day and night and potentially plunging into extremely cold conditions. Collapse of the carbon cycle. CO2 is an essential component of the carbon cycle, which regulates the flow of carbon between the atmosphere, oceans, and terrestrial ecosystems. A complete lack of CO2 would disrupt this cycle, leading to long-term ecological imbalances and disruptions in weather patterns. Increased solar radiation. With less CO2 to absorb and scatter sunlight, more solar radiation would reach the Earth's surface. This could lead to increased risks of skin cancer and other health problems for humans and other organisms. In summary, a complete absence of CO2 in the Earth's atmosphere would be catastrophic for life on our planet. It would lead to the collapse of ecosystems, mass extinctions, and the end of complex life forms as we know them. It is essential to recognize the significance of CO2 and other greenhouse gases in maintaining the delicate balance of Earth's climate and ecosystems. While reducing CO2 emissions is crucial to mitigate climate change, removing it entirely would have disastrous consequences. If our planet suddenly had no more hydrogen, it would have profound and catastrophic consequences for all life forms and the overall structure of the planet. Hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe and plays a crucial role in various processes, including energy production, chemical reactions, and the stability of stars. Here's what could happen if hydrogen were to disappear. Loss of water. Water, H2O, is composed of 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. If hydrogen vanished, water would no longer exist in its current form. Oceans, rivers, lakes, and other bodies of water would disappear. As water is essential for all forms of life, its absence would lead to the extinction of all life on Earth. Energy production. Hydrogen is an essential fuel source, particularly in stars. In our Sun, hydrogen undergoes nuclear fusion to form helium, releasing a tremendous amount of energy in the process. If hydrogen vanished, the Sun and other stars would lose their main fuel source, which could lead to their collapse or change in behavior, affecting Earth's climate and environment. Atmospheric composition. Hydrogen gas, H2, exists in trace amounts in Earth's atmosphere. While its absence wouldn't have an immediate impact on the atmosphere, the long-term effects would be significant. The disappearance of hydrogen, a light gas, might alter the overall density and composition of the atmosphere, leading to unpredictable consequences for weather patterns and climate. Chemical reactions. Hydrogen is involved in various chemical reactions, including those crucial for life, industry, and natural processes. Removing hydrogen would disrupt these reactions, leading to a collapse of ecosystems and affecting global food chains. Loss of stars. Hydrogen is essential for the formation of new stars in the universe. The absence of hydrogen would hinder the birth of new stars, ultimately leading to a decline in the number of stars in the universe over time. Changes in the universe. The absence of hydrogen would have far-reaching consequences for the universe's evolution and structure. Stars, galaxies, and other celestial bodies would be affected, potentially altering the course of cosmic events. It's important to emphasize that the sudden disappearance of hydrogen is a hypothetical scenario, and such an event is not possible based on our current understanding of the universe's fundamental laws. Hydrogen is a fundamental building block of matter and is present throughout the cosmos. Removing it entirely would require a fundamental change in the laws of physics, which is beyond the scope of our current knowledge. In summary, if hydrogen were to vanish suddenly from Earth and the universe, it would lead to the extinction of all life, disrupt essential processes, and have a profound impact on the structure and behavior of stars and galaxies. Thankfully, this scenario is purely speculative and not something that could occur in reality. If nitrogen were to suddenly disappear from our planet, it would have catastrophic consequences for all life forms and the environment. Nitrogen is a critical element that is essential for the structure of living organisms and plays a crucial role in various biochemical processes. Here's what could happen if nitrogen were to vanish. Disruption of biomolecules. Nitrogen is a vital component of biomolecules such as proteins, nucleic acids, DNA and RNA, and many cellular structures. Without nitrogen, the synthesis of these essential biomolecules would be severely impaired. This would lead to the breakdown of cellular functions and the inability of organisms to maintain their structure and carry out life-sustaining processes. Loss of nitrogen fixation. Nitrogen-fixing bacteria and certain plants are responsible for converting atmospheric nitrogen into forms usable by other living organisms. Without nitrogen fixation, most plants would be unable to absorb nitrogen from the soil, leading to widespread nutrient deficiencies and the eventual death of plants and the animals that depend on them for food. Impact on the food chain. Nitrogen is a crucial component of the food chain, as it is essential for the growth and development of plants and, consequently, the herbivores and carnivores that feed on them. With the loss of nitrogen, the entire food chain would collapse, leading to mass extinctions and the disruption of ecosystems. Depletion of atmospheric nitrogen. Nitrogen makes up approximately 78% of Earth's atmosphere. The sudden disappearance of atmospheric nitrogen would lead to a significant shift in the atmospheric composition. This would have unpredictable consequences for weather patterns, climate, and the overall stability of the atmosphere. Disruption of ocean ecosystems. Nitrogen is also a crucial nutrient for marine life. In the absence of nitrogen, phytoplankton and other marine organisms would struggle to survive, leading to a decline in marine biodiversity and disrupting the marine food web. Loss of nitrous oxide. N2O. Nitrous oxide is a greenhouse gas that contributes to global warming and climate change. Without nitrogen, the production of nitrous oxide would cease, potentially altering the Earth's climate. Impact on human agriculture. Agriculture heavily relies on nitrogen-based fertilizers to enhance crop growth. Without nitrogen, agricultural productivity would drastically decline, leading to food shortages and potential famine. It's important to note that the sudden disappearance of nitrogen from Earth is a hypothetical scenario and is not something that could occur naturally. Nitrogen is a fundamental element in the structure of the Earth's ecosystems, and life as we know it would not be possible without it. In summary, the sudden loss of nitrogen from our planet would lead to the collapse of ecosystems, mass extinctions, disruption of the food chain, and severe environmental and climatic changes. Thankfully, this scenario is purely speculative and not something that is likely to occur in reality.